When she breaks up with you, it's as if the ground beneath your feet vanishes. The routine that once anchored your days, her voice, her presence, the silent rituals of companionship disappears, and in its place stands a void. What you're experiencing is the collapse of a personal order, a narrative you had constructed about your future, your worth, and your identity in relation to someone else. That collapse is painful, and it should be. Because something you believed in deeply and emotionally has died, and it deserves mourning. But here's what you must understand first. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is information. It tells you that something was meaningful. It reminds you that something mattered. When people flee from that pain, when they bury it in alcohol, distractions, or meaningless pleasures, they aren't healing, they're hiding. They're pushing chaos into the corners of their lives, where it festers and eventually strikes back with greater vengeance. Instead of running from the pain, stand up and face it. You have to look the dragon in the eye. That doesn't mean collapsing into despair. It means standing consciously in the wreckage and observing what has happened without flinching. Let yourself feel the ache, not because suffering is virtuous, but because denial is deadly. When you suppress grief, you freeze your growth. When you allow yourself to feel it fully, you start to map the terrain of your soul. You begin the slow process of reorienting yourself in a world that no longer looks the same. The end of a relationship isn't just about losing a person. It's about the collapse of a structure of meaning. You had built routines around her, maybe even your self-worth was tied to her validation. And when that's ripped away, it feels like a part of you has been amputated. That sensation is chaos flooding into your ordered existence. And chaos is what exists when the things you counted on no longer hold. This is the time to resist the temptation of nihilism. That whisper that says, nothing matters anymore, is the voice of despair, and despair lies. It offers you an easy out. It says, why try? But if you listen to it long enough, it'll strip away your humanity. So instead, you stand up, not because you're unbroken, but because you refuse to stay broken. You may find yourself blaming her. That's normal. It's natural to want to find an external source for your suffering. But doing so keeps you trapped. Instead of focusing on what she did or didn't do, look inward. What signals did you miss? What weaknesses did you tolerate? Where were you blind? This isn't self-loathing, it's self-awareness. And there's a difference. Self-loathing weakens you. Self-awareness prepares you. When you're willing to explore your flaws without judgment, you gain something extraordinary, the ability to grow. Most men don't realize how defining this moment can be. The pain is a forge, and in it, you can either burn up or be refined. The path you choose depends on your willingness to accept the reality before you and walk through it voluntarily, even when every part of you wants to turn away. That is courage, not the absence of fear or pain, but the resolve to proceed regardless of them. Understand this: pain, when engaged properly, becomes a tool, a fire that, when contained and directed, becomes energy. But that only happens when you stop distracting yourself. Stop numbing out. Instead, sit in silence. Let your mind race. Let the thoughts scream. Eventually, the noise begins to make sense. Patterns emerge. And from that chaos, you begin to see the outline of a new order. It is in heartbreak that many men discover what they were lacking before: depth. When you feel shattered, something deeper can be born if you're willing to go there. If you're willing to listen to the silence that remains after she's gone, you'll hear something ancient, the voice of your own soul, calling you to rebuild. Not just to recover, but to transform. And transformation is no small thing. It demands sacrifice. The old version of you, the one that was dependent, complacent, distracted, that version has to die. Let it burn, because only then can something stronger emerge. But this requires discipline. It requires responsibility, and it requires a refusal to play the victim. No one is coming to save you from this pain, and that's a good thing. Because if someone could rescue you, you would never become the man capable of rescuing others, or himself. You're being called into a confrontation with yourself, with your past, with your potential. Answer that call. Lean into the pain, not masochistically, but courageously. That's where your power lies. This isn't a pleasant truth, but it's a liberating one. Suffering is part of existence. And when embraced properly, suffering produces character. It produces strength. It produces wisdom. That's what's being offered to you now. Not comfort, but transformation. Not relief, but rebirth. It's not a gift that's wrapped neatly. It's a gift buried in anguish. But if you have the courage to dig, you'll find something greater than what you lost, yourself. So when she breaks up with you, don't collapse. Don't lash out. Don't numb. Sit with the pain, understand it, integrate it. That's the first step to becoming someone worthy, not just of another relationship, but of a higher existence. When a breakup happens, the easiest and most instinctive thing to do is point fingers. She left, she changed, she lied, she pulled away. Maybe all of that is true. Maybe you were treated unfairly, even cruelly. But the truth is, if you stop there, if you fixate on her actions alone, you give away your power. Because the real work, the painful and necessary work, is to ask yourself, what part did I play in this? This isn't about blame, it's about responsibility. There's a crucial difference. Blame is emotional, reactive, and often external. Responsibility is rational, conscious, and internal. Taking responsibility doesn't mean she was justified in what she did. It doesn't mean you deserved to be hurt. It simply means you are mature enough to recognize that in any relational dynamic, you were not just a spectator. You were a participant, and as a participant, your choices, behaviors, habits, and values all shaped the outcome. Whether you were aware of it or not, start with the most basic question: were you honest? Not just with her, but with yourself. Did you ignore red flags in the beginning because you were lonely? Did you pretend to be okay with things you weren't okay with, simply to avoid conflict? Did you show up as your authentic self or as a version of yourself you thought she would like better? These are not accusations. These are invitations. Invitations to scrutinize your own alignment with your values and your boundaries. Now ask, were you present? Did you truly listen when she spoke? Did you notice her emotional state, or were you too absorbed in your own world? Did you meet her needs, not just in grand gestures, but in the quiet, daily acts of attention and presence that sustain connection? Often, men don't realize they've checked out until it's too late. They've stopped being curious about their partner, stopped investing effort, stopped paying attention. And relationships do not die from one big wound. They bleed out slowly through neglect and inattention. And then turn inward again. Were you becoming someone worth staying with? This one stings, but it's necessary. Were you growing as a man? Were you striving for purpose, for excellence, for integrity? Or were you complacent? Women may say they want comfort and stability, and they do, but they also want to be inspired. They want to feel like they are with a man who is going somewhere, who is striving towards something higher. If you lost your drive, your edge, your ambition, you may have unconsciously signaled that the relationship had nowhere else to go. These reflections are brutal, but they are transformative. Because when you stop pointing outward and begin to examine your own patterns, you gain control over your future. You begin to see where your own immaturity, insecurity, or avoidance contributed to the dysfunction. You begin to notice the traits that need pruning, the beliefs that need challenging, and the habits that need upgrading. You also begin to understand your patterns in choosing partners. Why did you choose her in the first place? Was it from strength or from neediness? Were you drawn to her because she represented something you admired, or because she filled a void in you that you were too afraid to face alone? Often, people don't fall in love. They fall into dependency. And when that dependency gets threatened, they call it heartbreak. But what they're really experiencing is a loss of identity, because their sense of self was entangled in someone else's approval. Responsibility is the foundation of freedom. When you own your part in the failure, you're no longer a victim, you're a student, you're someone who can grow, evolve, and become better. You're not shackled to the past, you're shaping the future, and that shift is the difference between repeating old patterns and breaking free from them. But let's be clear, this kind of radical self-honesty is not easy. It will demand that you confront your ego, that you admit to weakness, to laziness, to cowardice, to arrogance, that you admit that maybe you weren't the man you thought you were, that you let things slide, that you avoided hard conversations, that you reacted instead of responded, that you clung instead of trusted, that you expected her to fill the parts of you that you had not yet built yourself. It's painful to realize these things, but it's also liberating, because now you can do something about it. You can begin the real work. You can start cultivating emotional intelligence, communication skills, strength of character. You can begin to clarify your values, define your vision, and structure your life around something meaningful, not just someone. Don't let this breakup be just another wound you carry around. Let it be a mirror. A hard, cold, unflinching mirror, and don't turn away from what you see. Let it change you. Let it challenge you to grow into the kind of man who doesn't need a relationship to feel whole, but who is ready for one when the right person comes along. A man who can give, not out of desperation, but out of abundance. A man who can love, not because he needs to be saved, but because he has built himself strong enough to carry that responsibility. Taking responsibility for your part in the breakup is not weakness. It's strength. It's the beginning of self-respect. And it's the only path that leads to authentic healing and lasting transformation. Most men never walk it. They blame, they distract, they repeat. But if you choose differently, if you step up, reflect deeply, and change deliberately, you'll emerge from this pain not just intact, but elevated, hardened by truth, forged by fire, and finally, ready for something real. After the dust of heartbreak settles and you've faced the pain, the next critical move is to rebuild, not just emotionally but structurally, daily, deliberately, and with discipline. You're not just recovering from a failed relationship. You're standing at the edge of a fundamental question. Who are you now and who will you become? This is where most men falter. They wait for time to heal them as if passivity is medicine, but healing is not passive. It's active. It's a reconstruction process that demands intention and order. Breakups often leave your life in disarray. Sleep patterns fall apart, habits dissolve, focus scatters. Why? Because relationships, even dysfunctional ones, provide structure. You knew who to text in the morning, where you'd be on weekends, how your schedule revolved around another human being. When that scaffolding is ripped away, it leaves a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. If you don't fill that emptiness with something constructive, it will be filled for you by distractions, addictions, or despair. The antidote is discipline, simple, consistent, unrelenting discipline. Wake up at the same time every day, make your bed, clean your space, eat real food, move your body. These things are not trivial. They are foundational, because when everything feels like it's falling apart, small acts of order are declarations of self-respect. They are statements that say, I may be broken right now, but I refuse to be shattered. This is also the time to reintroduce challenge into your life. Emotional pain often pushes men into avoidance. They binge, watch, scroll endlessly, or drown themselves in meaningless distractions. That path leads to nowhere. What you need instead is struggle, productive struggle, train physically, learn a skill. Pursue mastery. Why? Because challenge forces adaptation. It demands presence, and presence pulls you out of the mental loop of regret and longing. Don't wait until you feel like it. Feelings are unreliable during grief. Your actions must lead your emotions, not the other way around. When you impose structure on your days, you begin to rebuild your sense of self. You remember what it means to achieve something, to follow through, to control what you can control. This is also the time to clarify your vision. What kind of man do you want to become? What kind of life do you want to live? Breakups often act like a reset button. The future you were building with someone else is no longer viable. That can feel terrifying, but it's also an opening, a chance to rewrite your story. Do not waste it. Journal, meditate, reflect, but don't get stuck in your head. Pair that introspection with action. Build a daily system that serves your goal. If you want to be physically strong, train. If you want to be emotionally intelligent, read and reflect. If you want to become financially free, work and plan. Every hour you spend in focused effort is another brick in the foundation of the new man you're becoming. You also need to guard your inputs. In heartbreak, the mind is vulnerable. Be careful what you expose it to. Don't saturate your consciousness with songs, movies, or media that reinforce despair or romantic longing. Instead, fill your mind with content that reinforces growth, purpose, and strength. Surround yourself, physically or virtually, with voices that challenge you to be better, not bitter. Rebuilding also requires boundaries. Emotional wounds make you vulnerable to regression. You might feel tempted to check her social media, to stalk her online, to reach out just to talk. Don't. Those behaviors don't bring closure, they reopen wounds. Discipline includes protecting your mind from self-inflicted harm. Block, unfollow, delete. Whatever it takes to create psychological space to heal and grow. Remember, this process will not feel good in the beginning. It will feel empty, robotic, even pointless at times, but stay with it. What feels meaningless today becomes empowering tomorrow. You're teaching yourself that you can function, thrive, and become more, even in the absence of what you lost. That is strength, that is masculinity, not in the surface-level bravado, but in the silent, daily grind of building a new life brick by brick. You are not just recovering from a breakup, you are rebuilding a fortress. A stronger identity, a clearer vision, a structured life, one decision at a time, that's how you rise, not in one grand leap, but in 1,000 silent, consistent, disciplined steps. When a relationship ends, especially one that meant something deeply to you, there's a natural tendency to spiral into bitterness, cynicism, and despair. You start to question everything, not just about her, but about love itself, about people, about whether it's even worth it to trust again. That's the dark path. It's seductive. It tells you to shut down emotionally, to armor yourself against future pain by avoiding vulnerability entirely. But that mindset doesn't protect you. It poisons you. The far more courageous path is to aim at a higher ideal, to let the loss refine your character instead of letting it destroy your capacity to love, grow, or trust again. This is where meaning becomes essential. When something painful happens, especially heartbreak, it becomes a test of your world, you. If you believe life is random and meaningless, then suffering feels like a personal attack. But if you believe, even tentatively, that pain can be purposeful, if it can be used to forge something stronger in you, then the suffering itself becomes part of your transformation. That shift in mindset is everything. Pain is a teacher, and heartbreak, perhaps more than any other kind of pain, reveals your unfinished parts. It shows you where you were weak, where you were unbalanced, where you placed too much of your identity in someone else's hands. Let it show you. Don't rush to fill the gap she left with someone new. Don't numb it, sit with it, observe it, let it change you. Now, understand this. Aiming at a higher ideal doesn't mean fantasizing about being perfect or imagining some flawless version of yourself. It means choosing, day by day, to become more honest, more courageous, more disciplined, more principled. To become a man who can carry responsibility with grace, and who doesn't need to be in a relationship to feel complete, but who can eventually bring strength and depth to one when the time is right. Use this moment to examine what kind of partner you want to become. Not what kind of woman you want to find, that comes later. Right now, the focus must be on building a life and a self that is worth sharing. A man with vision, values, and discipline naturally attracts what aligns with him. Desperation attracts dysfunction. Wholeness attracts clarity. You must also choose not to be ruled by resentment. That's a silent killer. You may feel tempted to think all women are the same, that love is a game, that caring too much is a weakness. These thoughts feel like strength, but they are actually symptoms of hurt that hasn't been processed. If you let them take root, They'll harden your heart and shrink your potential. Instead, choose the harder route. Keep your heart open, but guard it with wisdom. Learn from the past, don't let it define your future. You also need something to aim at that transcends relationships, a vision beyond romance, a purpose that stands on its own. Maybe it's building something meaningful in your career. Maybe it's developing your body and mind. Maybe it's contributing to your community, creating art, mentoring others, or pushing the boundaries of your craft. Whatever it is, it must be big enough to contain your pain. That's how purpose works. It gives suffering a place to go. A higher ideal is not abstract, it's specific. It's the version of you who doesn't fold under loss. It's the man who keeps showing up even when he doesn't feel like it. Who chooses growth over comfort, integrity over impulse, structure over chaos. That's who you're building, and heartbreak, while devastating, offers one of the most powerful opportunities to start that process. This is your invitation to rise, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. To stop obsessing over what was lost and begin building what could be gained. To stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What does this make possible now?" That shift from victim to creator is the turning point, so aim high. Set your sights on something noble, not because you're trying to prove anything to her or anyone else, but because that's the only way to make this pain matter. Let it fuel your evolution. Let it forge depth, character, and vision. Let this heartbreak become the birthplace of a better, stronger, more complete version of yourself. That's how you win, not by getting her back, but by becoming a man no loss can undo.